Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we learn from Venerable Fulton Sheen, one of the greatest Catholic teachers in modern times. Join me, Amy Thomas, once a week for a short reading out of Bishop Sheen's book, Way to Inner Peace. Hello, Catholic pilgrims, and welcome to week 3 of our readings from Venerable Fulton Sheen's book, Way to Inner Peace. Before we get started, I'd like to bring up 2 logistical issues. The first one is it has been brought to my attention that there is another version of the book, Way to Inner Peace, out there. I have the book that is yellow and has Venerable Fulton Sheen on the front. There is another book that I think has a bird on the front of it. It looks older, and they are different. The one with the bird on the front is shorter. It doesn't have as many pages, and so it doesn't have the same numbers as the book that I have. I was not aware of this when I purchased the book. I had seen it, but I thought they were just exactly the same thing, just a different cover, but they are not. So I apologize if you bought the other book, and as you're following along, you're like, wait, my number 2 is different than her number 2. If you want to purchase the new one, you are free to do that, but you don't have to, obviously. You can just listen to my words, and hopefully the numbers will match up at some point. The second thing is, if you have subscribed to this podcast, you will also notice that my podcast from last year on Sister Faustina's Diary is uploading every day. What I'm trying to do is bring that podcast over so it's all incorporated together in one podcast, and so that is why you are seeing a daily refreshing of the Sister Faustina podcast. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to eventually get rid of the old one and just have it all here. So you are free to listen to that one as well. It is a daily podcast, and I would invite you to do so. With that, we are going to move on to this week's topic, and it's a great one, and I think we are going to really learn a lot. As I was reading through this week's topic, I found myself just going, yes, this is so true, and I think it's very relatable. So our topic this week is faithfulness in little things, and 3 points to pay attention to as we read this are self-surrender, apparent insignificance, and motive. Number 3. Faithfulness in little things. Faithfulness in great things is not uncommon. Faithfulness in little things is rare, but most indicative of true character. Almost any husband would leap into the sea or rush into a burning building to rescue his perishing wife. But to anticipate the convenience or happiness of the wife in some small matter, the neglect of which would go unnoticed, is a more eloquent proof of tenderness. Our lives, for the most part, are made up of little things, and by these our character is to be tested. There are very few who have to take a prominent place in the great conflicts of our age. The vast majority must dwell in humbler scenes and be content to do a more humble work. The conflicts which we have to endure, either against evil in our own soul or in the moral circle where our influence would seem to be trivial, are in reality the struggle of the battle for life and decency. And true heroism is shown here as well as in those grander scales in which others win the leader's fame or the martyr's crown. Little duties carefully discharged, little temptations earnestly resisted with the strength which God supplies, little sins crucified, these all together help to form that character which is to be described not as popular or glamorous, but as moral and noble. From God's point of view, nothing is great, nothing is small as we measure it. The worth and the quality of any action depends upon its motive, and not at all upon its prominence or any of the other accidents which we are apt to adopt as standards of greatness. Nothing is small that can be done with a mighty motive, such as the mite which the widow dropped into the temple treasury. Conscience knows no such word as large or small. It knows only 2 words, right and wrong. He who welcomes a prophet because he is a prophet shall receive the reward given to prophets. Because though not gifted with the prophet's tongue, he has the prophet's spirit, and does his small act of hospitality from the very same prophetic impulse, which in another and one more loftily endowed leads to burning words and mighty deeds. A man is much more inclined to concentrate his moral actions in one great moment, and thereby often wins the merit of a hero. A woman, on the contrary, scatters her tiny little sacrifices through life and multiplies them to such an extent that very few give her the credit for sacrifice because it has been so multiplied. In the spiritual order, it is much easier to do some mighty act of self-surrender than daily and patiently to crucify the flesh with all of its inordinate affections. The smallest duties are often harder because of their apparent insignificance and their constant reoccurrence. Unfaithfulness in little things can also prepare for unfaithfulness in the great. By a small act of injustice, the line which separates the right from the wrong is just as effectively broken. Infidelity in little things deteriorates the moral sense. It makes a person untrustworthy. It loosens the ties that bind society together, and it is a counteracting agency of that divine love which ought to be the cement of good human relationships. Men in public life who are accused of confiscating great sums of money or else profiting by their office to secure gifts or enrich themselves in any manner whatsoever began with unfaithfulness in the minor details of life. Somewhere and somehow the wall and partition between right and wrong had to be broken down. And what is tragic about our national situation is that there is no longer a moral indignation against such infractions of the law of honesty. Little things make up the universe. The clouds gather up the rain and moisture and part with them in drops. Time is so precious that it is given out second by second. Stars do not leap about in their orbits, but keep a measured pace. In like manner, humans will find little to do if they save their energy for great occasions. In every direction, the great is reached through the little. The turning of a tiny needle steadily toward a fixed point is a little common thing, but it guides navies along the uncharted seas. The least significant trifle becomes a great thing if the alternative of obedience or rebellion is involved in it. To live by the day and to watch each step is the true pilgrimage method, for there is nothing little if God requires it. Beautiful, isn't it? It's so beautiful. I really love this number because in a way it's very positive. The first couple of chapters, or I guess numbers, were a little more on the don't do this, but this is so encouraging. Why? Well, let's go to the first part that I picked out here. He says on page 10, there are very few who have to take a prominent place in the great conflicts of our age. The vast majority must dwell in humbler scenes and be content to do a more humble work. And it seems in our lives all around us that there are people doing amazing and great things. And the reason we feel this way is because of the internet and how much news we consume. And we can see what people are doing across the world. And we look at our lives and we're like, man, I'm not doing anything. These people out here are really doing something. And it just seems that, we just kind of live ordinary, boring lives and everybody else is doing something great. And so what are we? What do we amount to? Nothing. That's what we think anyway. And so we feel desperate to do the same as someone else. We feel desperate to do something great with our lives. Now, my husband in the military, he often asks, young guys, what do you want to do with your life? And I want to do something big. Well, what do you want to do? I don't know, just something big. And it's like, well, you kind of need a plan if you're going to do something big, but that's just the idea. I need to do something big. And we become so desperate to make our lives worthy through the big. And I think this is a big reason why women struggle so much with being a housewife and a stay-at-home mom, because nobody writes books about housewives, and nobody writes, books or does documentaries on the stay-at-home mom. And I have been a working mom and I've been a stay-at-home mom. I've been a stay-at-home mom a lot longer, but it's just the kind of the same thing day in and day out. And I don't have anything spectacular to tell my husband when he gets home, but there's still something wonderful in those things, in those humbler scenes. And we fail to recognize that because all that we see is people doing great things. But are they really great things? I mean, most of the time, are they really great things? Are they just people with a viral post, or people with an odd story, or people just doing bad things and they get noticed? I mean, sometimes the greatest things are just done in the simple things of life. The next thing I wanted to move on to is where he says, the worth and the quality of any action depends upon its motive and not at all upon its prominence or any of the other accidents which we are apt to adopt as standards of greatness. Nothing is small that can be done with a mighty motive. And so in what I just read, we have some St. Thomas Aquinas lingo. He talks about the accidents. Well, what are the accidents? The accidents are the characteristics of what we set as the standards of greatness. What do great things look like? Well, in our culture, it's to be seen. Everybody needs to know about it, right? It needs to be world changing. Like, we're just going to save the world. It needs to be dynamic, like really powerful, just earth shattering. Those are, in our estimation, the accidents of great things. But what Fulton Sheen is saying is, no. If God has asked you to do it, then it doesn't matter if it's great or small. It doesn't matter if it's, on a grand scale or just in your own home. If God has asked you, then it's important. It has worth. It needs to be done. And you don't need to think of it as something that's, just insignificant and not worth doing. And one thing in here, I absolutely loved, it touched me so much as a woman, is where he says on page 11, a man is much more inclined to concentrate his moral actions in one great moment, and thereby often wins the merit of a hero. A woman, on the contrary, scatters her tiny little sacrifices through life and multiplies them to such an extent that very few give her the credit for sacrifice. Oh, isn't that so true? Not to take away, what men do. I mean, men rush into burning buildings and save people. And so do, some women as well. But on the battlefields of life and war, men rush into battle to keep our country free and to protect. And all those things are very dynamic and very seen. And oftentimes, we don't realize all the little sacrifices that a woman makes in a day, and she just multiplies them throughout her day, and trying to make sure that her family is loved and cared for. I just really appreciated that he put that in there. And sometimes, it does seem like, women, especially those who stay at home and take care of the family, don't get any credit for being heroic in any type of way. And I don't want to wear a hero's badge or anything like that. It's just nice to be acknowledged sometimes. And one more point that I wanted to bring up was where he says, the smallest duties are often harder because of their apparent insignificance. He says through this whole thing, remember, our lives are just made up of little moments. Very rarely are you going to have these grand moments in your life where you can really go in and do something amazing. No, our lives are just made up of little moments here and there, with a big one thrown in every now and then. But for the most part, we get up, we go to school, we go to work, we take care of the family, we do our daily things, our daily chores, we come home, we have dinner, we get the family ready for bed, we wind down our day, we go to sleep, and we get up and we do it all over again for the most part. And we start to see that as insignificant. But that's life. And if we do it well, and if we do all those things with a mighty motive, like he says, if we're faithful in those little things, It helps us down the line when the big thing comes along, and we need to show faithfulness. And this is so encouraging because all of our lives are made up of little things. Even the most famous celebrities in the world, their lives are made up of little moments as well, with big moments thrown in, just like us, that just gets more attention. And so we all need to just recognize that every day is a chance to get up and be faithful in the little things. Faithful to our prayer life, faithful to our children, faithful to our spouse, faithful to doing our chores in an act of charity and love, and not resentment and bitterness. No, doing all those things for love of others. And if we can do that, then when the big moments come, we'll have disciplined ourselves in the little things so that we can tackle the big things. I know that I said that was the last thing, but before we go, this last part, this last paragraph is poetry. Poetry. I invite you to read it over again. It was so beautiful. It touched my heart so much. And I gotta say, the last line of that, I will read that, is so perfect for us as Catholic pilgrims. And I will end with this. To live by the day and to watch each step is the true pilgrimage method, for there is nothing little if God requires it. That is all for today, Catholic pilgrims. I will see you back here for week 4. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.